is Monday, the 3rd of May, and Vanessa and I here are stopping by the Eastern Utah Prehistory Museum. Is
Prehistoric.
Utah State University Eastern Prehistoric Museum.
Now you can tell he's an expert because he can say all that in one pass. Anyway, so you are Dr.
So Dr. Joshua Lively, so I'm the curator of paleontology.
Oh,
here.
the curator. Okay.
Yeah.
Not to see, I imagine. Now, I was asking Dr. Joshua here if there's anything really emergent going on in paleontology that he might be aware of. And what I was doing is I was thinking about how physicists came out with variances in the mass of muon, which is kind of like this ultra heavy electron that doesn't live very long, much shorter than any of the dinosaurs that we have here.
Yeah.
And so Joshua is going to give us a little bit of a background, and then Vanessa was going to ask a little bit about the museum so we could have this on the YouTube channel for you folks while we're on
sure. Yeah, so one of the really neat stories that came out recently in paleontology, and especially right here in Utah, where we're kind of the hotbed of paleontology.
Yeah, that Utah raptor is kind of like startling.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Actually, I'm writing about it right now for
cool.
our new exhibit that's going in. But something that's really neat out of southern Utah, Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument.
We've been there. Yeah.
Some of my colleagues just recently published a paper. This was 2 weeks ago today, I think, talking about this new site that preserves multiple individuals of tyrannosaurs, from babies all the way up to adults.
Are you saying they were familial? The Tyrannosauruses?
So they were found in one site.
In one location.
Yeah, so just one little...
I get it. But it could have been spaced over a long period of time. They all gravitated to it.
No, probably, their hypothesis is that they all died and were buried together in this one locality. And the big thing that suggests, it's really only, I think they said, the second site that suggests gregarious behavior.
I know, I would think most predators are very solitary.
Well, you think about some things like wolves and lions.
That's an exception.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always been suggested that, raptors, things like our Utah raptor or velociraptor, Dromaeosaurus, were potentially pack hunters. But the authors of this new paper, kind of headlined by Grand Staircase paleontologist Alan Titus, Dr. Titus and his colleagues suggest that this was actually gregarious behavior potentially. Maybe suggesting that they were all living together. So there's always a little bit of a question of whether or not, just because you have a big mass of the same critter preserved together, is it truly representative of behavior? Maybe not, but this provides at least a little piece of evidence that tyrannosaurs were living together.
Wow, that actually astonishes me. I'd never imagined. I'm gonna.
New stuff comes out in paleontology all the time, but that was one of the really cool things that came out very recently.
Yeah.
Make sure it's checked that no one has cold symptoms.
Okay, Joshua, I was just asking you whether or not what you're particularly working in as far as your curation of the museum.
One thing that we're really working on right now, I'm pretty new. I'm only about 7 months into this job.
Well,
so,
2 more months and you'll have gestated.
Pretty much, yeah. And the one thing I'm hoping to birth is a very active field program. So, we just got back from working in Triassic rocks, about 225 million year old rocks from right at the beginning of the age.
That would have been the Pan-continent era, right?
Yeah, so Pangea was definitely, you could have hiked from Utah to Europe, to South Africa, all over the place, and dinosaurs could have done the same thing. So we just got back from that trip, but we're actually working in much younger rocks, only 75 million year old rocks, at the end of this month, east of Green River. So working on building a big field program right now, planning out our field trips, really to help fill in the collections, but also fill in the exhibits here at the museum.
Do you expect any like revelatory science coming out of those investigations?
We
Like-
hope so.
Yeah.
That's one big part about field science. You plan out where you want to go, and where the big questions could potentially be answered. But until you get out there and start finding stuff, who knows? Some of these rocks that we're working in have not been as explored as some of the other more commonly prospected rock units here in Utah. So that's one thing I'm working on, trying to get out some research on the groups of animals that I work on, which are mostly mosasaurs, a group of marine reptiles, these giant whale-sized lizards, and then also I do a lot of research with turtles, with fossil turtles.
As I can. I'm going to ask you a quick off-the-wall question because I'm an astronomer and I've seen the planet Mars in opposition. If you were instantly transported to Mars and began archaeologically digging in your creative imagination, and as a scientist, what do you think you might find there?
I think you'd find rocks, maybe evidence of flowing water. That's been very clear from looking at some
Pretty
of the
verified
images.
now, yeah.
Yeah, but that's about it.
So we're in the town called Price, which is a coal mining town. And is this how they discovered the dinosaur foots, was when they started coal mining?
Yeah, so we have a long history of coal mining here in Carbon County, Utah, outside of Price, Kenilworth, and Helper. And, as they were going through mining these coal seams and these underground mines, the miners started realizing there were these big dinosaur tracks, basically the internal casts, the casts of those tracks left behind by the dinosaurs. Basically, the dinosaurs were walking through a swampy environment, which is why you have coal there. And their footprints then got filled in with sand and then got preserved on the tops of these coal seams. And so basically what you would do, the miners would stay late after their shift and hammer these out of the coal mines. So you find these tracks all over the place in these rocks, and because they were so abundant, just about every museum around the world now has some of these tracks from the Black Hawk Formation. But they were really instrumental in some of the early collections in our museum. Very much started as a community museum with folks donating their footprints, their tracks. So actually that one right over there was the first specimen ever donated to the museum by the family of a coal miner. So we have, tracks are very different than skeletons in that, you can't tell a lot about what the rest of the animal looks like, but you can learn a lot about their behavior from these tracks. We have everything from these big duck-billed dinosaur tracks to horned dinosaurs, ceratopsian tracks, also quite a few theropod dinosaurs. One just roared. You can get those meat-eating tracks as well.
Oh, I just see that there's bird tracks here, and we could tell the size of birds, 50 million years ago?
Well, that would have been after the asteroid strike 50 million years ago, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So those are in younger rocks called the Green River Formation. We've actually got some better bird tracks just around the corner.
Oh, you do?
Even better than that, yeah.
So I have one more question. What do you see in over the next decade or so? What do you see kind of like emergent in paleontology happening?
Oh gosh, we're really moving towards exploring new methods for looking at dinosaur biology. We're learning a lot more about the biology of animals of these extinct animals by doing things like slicing into the bone, looking at their the bone microstructure. That's been going on for years now, but finding doing that with even larger animals. Gosh, using CT scans. That's something that's been going on for a couple of decades, but we're starting to ask new biological questions related to how they moved, how they lived, all based on these different new methods. So there's a lot, and sometimes it's hard to predict what is going to be that new emergent. There's a new emergent stories, but definitely a lot related to the biology of these animals.
I'm saying.
Moving well past thinking of these as bones and animals that we can't even imagine how they lived. We're finding new ways to address those questions.
That's not a lie. Now, along that line, I have one more question. What about velociraptors, apparently had a fairly large brain to body mass ratio? A couple of questions I'd have on that is, are their brains somehow poorly constructed, or are their brains as, let's say, as sophisticated as ours, though smaller?
I mean, it's just they're very different. They're especially folks have taken have done some projects on the evolution of the bird brain, for example.
Sure.
And if you look at something like a velociraptor, very different than a modern bird.
It's not a diencephalonic.
Even the earliest birds are a lot more raptor-like than bird-like. But,
so the modern diencephalon approach, formation of the brain, wasn't what you'd see back then.
Yeah, very different brain.
Very different.
Structure.
That's a giant clam.
But and another challenge with that is that when we're studying dinosaur brains, we're really just studying the brain case. We're studying the cavity that held the brain. And there have been some good studies showing that at least in modern birds, you do get some good resolution in looking at that space. Mm-hmm. Is that the case for all dinosaurs? Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, so if you're ever driving through eastern Utah between Salt Lake City and Moab, make sure you stop here in Price, Utah to take a look at the museum. We're really, between the paleontology side and the archaeology side, we're really a gateway to understanding the landscape and the cultural and biological history of eastern Utah. Check this out.
Well, Dr. Joshua, that was Josh, right?
And Josh.
That was really great of you to volunteer your time.
Oh, for sure.
We might get 10 or 20 views.